Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, Prydwen has come out with their tier list update for the second half of the 2.6 patch. I got a preview of it yesterday while I was testing out Iuno, and I gotta say, boy oh boy, this is a big one. There are already some disagreements that I have, some reasonings that I already have prepared going on into it, but just be warned in advance, this is probably the fattest changelog in Prydwen history. Like, literally, we might be spending a good, it's just gonna be a long one. With that in mind, I'm still scrolling. To go back up, let's go ahead, let's get right into it. Let's start breaking it down. With Iuno's release and a new iteration of a Wuthering Waves, the promised big Wuthering Waves tier list rework has come. So basically the reasoning behind this is that WhiWa has had a very big elevation in the HP of the mobs across the past two patches. Prydwen was kind of like checking to see if there was going to be a real, like a dial back on those before making a full update on their WhiWa tier list. And with the release of like Burning Waves, it looks like Kuro's trying to make the game mode more accessible by adding that buff. They kept HP the same, and then proceeded to add in more damage, but it's not really quite there yet. So there are a lot of units that are, let's just be honest here, suffering. You'll see that on the tier list later. We additionally revamped our criteria to account for the big changes the Wuthering Waves meta faced recently. That part is a lot of obvious justification for how we grade our characters though. So you're free to skip this if you're not too interested in having a deep understanding of where we're coming from the tier list. We are interested, so we will read it. Let's for now focus on the ToA. What is important to keep in mind here is that due to how closely this tier list update was done compared to the new Hazard Tower of Adversity, Zones 3 and 4, we haven't had enough time to conduct properly detailed testing in order to form a fully accurate opinion on how the meta has evolved. Hence, this tier list update will only be representative of the meta within the first 2 floors of the Hazard Tower. Just to show you what they're talking about over here. Prydwen's basically saying that with the new ToA updates that came midway through 2.6, they're not actually focusing too much on these floors over here, the more challenging ones. It's going to be mainly focused on these two. That's just something to keep in mind, you know, if there are some concerns about like either the power creep or the specificity of the buffs, this tier list update isn't going to be getting into those. Expect some placements to change, and feel free to discuss how you think placements should evolve due to the new floor releases. We gladly welcome your impressions and feedback. So I think like this statement over here kind of like really shows that the games, with all the new features that are getting added to the game's endgame, there's a lot of shuffling that's going to be going on back and forth. I expect a lot more tier list movements across maybe like the next patch or two as we get a little bit more of like a rundown, right, of like how specific teams, some new combinations are working out, because right now it seems like a lot of things are changing, and you know, that naturally means there's a bit of scrambling on Prydwen's end to try to get a cap on everything that's going on. But they've already made a big stab at it. You can tell from how long the tier list changes are. So first things first, let's look at the ToA one, the ToA changelog, and then the ToA tier list, and then we'll get into the WhiWa changelog and the WhiWa tier list. ToA changes. Iuno is getting added in 2 roles where she's extremely competent, DPS and hybrid. Iuno Hybrid added as a tier 0.5 with no signatures, and then she's going to be a tier 0 with signatures. Think of this as the sub DPS role. While Iuno's reliance on having a proper weapon is definitely noteworthy due to her personal damage focus, and that is true, her personal damage as a sub DPS is very high, which does take her performance on the non-signature tier list, where she's only a very slight upgrade from an S6 Mortify. This is why I've said this before, and I've said this a lot of times. If you're pulling Iuno, and the only reason why you're pulling Iuno is to buff your Augusta, don't pull her. It's not really worth it. Because at that point, you're pulling her to combine her with one unit on the roster, and then there's another unit, naturally, that we just talked about, Mortify, that's able to just get that job done while also being like 30 times more affordable, better free-to-play weapon options, right? It's when you can fully realize her value as like a personal damage dealer across multiple teams, while also being a sub DPS and a healer, that you're able to really get that full value. And unfortunately, it's something that I feel like maybe some players have like fallen for. Yes, your Augusta will get better with Iuno, but it's like he's already getting the job done. So, you know, it's a bit of a rough pull decision from that regard. Even with the S6 Mortify thing, rest assured that she's easily the best buffer for 2 characters, being Gian and particularly Augusta. She has healing, personal damage, and a strong damage amplify buffs for those 2. And since Augusta is a top tier DPS, naturally Iuno will rank very high as hybrid, as Iuno's best partner. On top of this, she has some extra team flexibility with Gian or even Phoebe, which are all strong DPS contenders. Great character overall. I would agree with that. I actually think she's very high value. I think she's very flexible, and it's great that she has like different rotations she can use depending on the role that she's playing. So now we have Iuno as a DPS, added as a tier 0.5 on both. Remember we said Iuno has a damage focus. Kuro chose to give her enough to where she's an Apex tier main DPS as well, which is ridiculous. Not even Brant is reaching her hyper carry potential. Iuno is a great main carry and a great buffer, hence she ranks high as both a DPS and a hybrid. She does, however, remain overshadowed by Kartithia in the Arrow DPS department. Expectedly so. So Iuno does have a lot of main DPS potential, but the thing is, you have to do some different rotations, extend your field time, do all of that, and of course, you won't be making much use out of her healing, right? Because you're probably going to have some sort of amplifier like a Shorekeeper or an Arrow Rover on her team. And the thing is, she has a lot of teams that are available, right? She's got her John Shin team with Shorekeeper, and she also has her Arrow Rover Kartithia team as well. But the thing that I will say is that if you already have Kartithia, then there's not really any reason at all to be playing her as a DPS, because the Kartithia team overall, right, is going to synergize a lot better with those Arrow Rover and like Chikona teammates. And the thing is that it's like, it's odd to have some of the pieces that make her feel well, or that make her feel good as a DPS, without already having like a DPS that already synergizes better. So it's like, you can play her as a main DPS. It's just, it's not very likely that you'll be like doing it. Like, this is the team over here that I'm talking about, right? Most people have, if they have these two characters built and ready to go, they typically have her. And this is one of Iuno's main DPS teams. But it's also like, why would you ever play this team when you already have like this one ready to go? So it's like, it's a little bit more of like a for fun thing, and it's great that it works out well. It's just, yeah, her best team just involves using Kartithias, which is kind of interesting and kind of funny. Now we got Gian. He has been placed on the watch list, both tier lists. Spaghetti-O. The funniest part about DPS Iuno is that we're conflicted on saying Gian is equal to her Arrow main DPS potential, even when Iuno is the one buffing Gian, and yes, she's his new best partner. Yes, the Chikona Iuno Gian team is incredibly good. Gian's total damage in one rotation cannot keep up with Iuno's, and as a result, they end up acting more of a dual carry team than Gian being a true main DPS like he is with Mortefi. We're still waiting to watch list Gian to go up in tier 0.5 on the basis that he is much better than he used to be with Iuno's release. So yes, Gian should be going up in the tier list, ladies and gentlemen. That is true. And this is the thing, guys. I think a lot of people are failing to realize something very essential about Gian and his, well, his rotation and how he works. People are talking about, oh, Gian's damage is so low. Oh, Gian's damage can't fall. Oh, Iuno can deal more damage in a rotation. This is, it's quite simple, ladies and gentlemen. Iuno can use the field time in the Gian team very, very, very well, managing cooldowns, all of that, for a very simple reason. Gian's liberation only lasts 10 seconds. Gian has, as a character, one of the shortest rotations in the game. If you, like, intro skill in on him, you have the Nightmare Echo, he has a field time that is literally 10 to 11 seconds. 10 to 11 seconds of field time is literally one of the shortest rotations in the game. And what that means is that in a typical team where there are other characters, you know, where a rotation might be like 30 seconds, there's a lot of time, right? There's a lot of time in that 30 seconds where Gian doesn't need to be on field, where he isn't doing anything. And then Iuno can come in and really fill out the gaps very, very significantly and get a lot of performance out of that, right? And with her buffing being better than Mortefi's on the amplifier side, and then all of like the gusts of welcome stuff that you can get going with Chikona, the end result is that, yeah, the partnering works really well there. And you want to know something special about Gian compared to Augusta? This character's rotation is like actually 50% shorter than hers. And so that means you're doing actually more rotations with the Gian team than you would be with an Augusta one, because she kind of takes up a lot of field time. There's a lot of situations where your outro skill from like a Mortefi or even a Iuno can drop off. It can drop off before you use your liberation, because she can sometimes take a while to charge up all of her stuff. That's really it. So, yeah, Gian's is just intro skill in, liberation, go. Hers, bit of a delayed, you know, burst at the end. So, yeah, you end up doing more rotations with that Gian team that we were talking about before. So now that we covered that, glad to see that Prydwen is finally recognizing the potential over here. Excited to see Gian go up in the tier list. awesome. He's going up to tier 0.5 on the basis that he's much better than he used to be, but further testing will be conducted between DPS Iuno and Gian to see who's performing better, or at least if they're equals. I think this is the thing. A lot of people have been saying one's better than the other. It's really just like a matter of like flavor. Because one thing is very certain about Iuno and her damage, she has very little AoE and not a lot of consistent CC. And so we're over here talking about damage potential and like ranking damage numbers. And this guy has literally like a vacuum built into his kit, right? And he can hit way more enemies than Iuno can as well. So there's naturally going to be trade-offs over there. I don't, like, what really matters that much if his damage is 5% lower if he has all of that built-in utility in his kit? ToA doesn't need AoE much. Nope, you're a fucking liar. So they're seeing how it evolves. Let's look at Dan Jin now, the Dan Jin DPS. She has been removed from the tier list. This change was made because Dan Jin fits the bill for the hybrid category significantly more, as she either shares field time with Havoc Rover and Quickswap, which isn't really used anymore over Rosia, and her main DPS playstyle with a character like Cantarella does not keep up compared to her hybrid role alongside Frolova or Camellia, which is comparatively much stronger. So this is actually something that I've been saying ever since Frolova's release. You can replace Rosia with Dan Jin in Frolova's team, like Frolova, Cantarella, Dan Jin, and it's like really good. I noticed almost no like loss in performance going from this to literally this when I was testing out the character, because Dan Jin is, in my opinion, one of the best sub DPSs in the game, with like her combination of damage, rotation, and of course buffing. I think the goal over here is just to show that, like, yes, she can be played as a DPS, but every single one of her other teams just does better. And so why recommend a subpar team when there's way better ways to use the character? And I think this is also why they removed Alto, and they also removed, what's her name, Chacona as well, because it really does lead to, I think, situations where players can mislead themselves. They can, like, mislead themselves into, like, investing towards something that's not really that good. You know what I mean? Like, they start building, like, the Havoc set on Dan Jin instead of, like, Midnight Veil, doing all of that stuff. They build, like, Windward Pilgrimage on Chakota instead of Gust of Welkin, and it's like, okay, that's kind of like a waste of resources, right? When the ultimate goal is to use those characters on, you know, more supportive positions. So I can appreciate them doing this. I think it makes a lot more sense. John Shin has been buffed. Or, not really. Yeah, she's been buffed with the release. Tier 3 to Tier 2. Again, we're on the main DPS Iuno change. While John Shin is not DPS Iuno's best hybrid, that would be Chakota. Like I said before, Chakota Arrow Rover. She's her second best. And honestly, she could be worth learning if you want to make DPS Iuno work, since the team functions perfectly fine. She stays in the niche character bracket due to only being a replacement option at best, but John Shin is at least good in the role. This is the situation where I would say go for DPS Iuno. It's if you want to use your John Shin more. Because Shorekeeper, John Shin, and Iuno is a team that works. It's not as good as the other Arrow Rover Chakota team, but it is a team that works. And so if you're somebody that really likes the Monk, then go for it, right? It's definitely a fun thing that you can play, but just recognize I don't think it's going to be that great in some of those AoE situations. Now we got Rover Arrow, Tier 1 to Tier 0.5. Ew. Now they have access to their S4 and, most importantly, R5 of their signature weapon, Blood Pack's Pledge. Arrow Rover has a legitimate 26% team-wide arrow damage amplify outro, which is easily upkept throughout a whole fight. This makes them a top pick for every Arrow team, from Kartithia to DPS Iuno to even Gian, since they're a top pick for every team in their niche, including their literal best team in the game. They're joining the top ranks as an Apex tier support. So this is kind of like the trade-off that I would say for this is I can understand bumping them up because they have access to like their full amplifying potential now. But this character, Arrow Rover, feels so bad to fucking play. I feel like they shouldn't even be tier 0.5 on the basis that playing them makes you want to uninstall the game. I will actively seek out opportunities to not use this unit because doing their rotation makes me feel like I'm playing a different game, and it's not a fun one. There are so many situations where you'll like miss enemies with attacks, you'll get like hit out of the air, you literally can't dodge. You can't dodge without extending your rotation for like 4 seconds. And you just like, whenever you're using this character, you're like, I don't like playing this guy. And if you do like playing Arrow Rover and you do like using their forte and their skill and their jump air attacks and all of that, I think you're a fucking freak. It's okay to be a freak, but I do think you're weird because this character feels like fucking shit to play for most of the population. That's my take. And again, it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. My argument is to keep them at, even though they're strong, is to like keep them at T1 because it's just they feel so bad. But then again, it is fine to recognize their strengths, so I'm not really... I feel like there just needs to be, like, some statement about how fucking awful they feel to play. Maybe they just get some sort of, like, red label being, like, pain in the fucking ass, or, like, dog shit kit, or, like, dog shit feeling. I don't know. Something like that. Just to, like, signify, yes, this character is strong, but God forbid, God, no, you don't want to actually use them. Clunky, sure. Phoebe, in Confession mode. Tier 0 to Tier 0.5. Confession Phoebe, even in her best team, where she's needed by Zani to perform, is still going down. Why? Because team flexibility is a factor for the criteria on which we rate hybrids, and Confession Phoebe has Zani and no one else. This is actually something that I said to Prydwen. I was like, I don't really know why Phoebe can be considered a Tier 0 in her present state, where she only works on one team in the game. This is a sub-DPS character, right, that somebody could look at this tier list and decide to spend 160 pulls on, and this works on literally one team in the game. And no, I'm not going to consider Zani, Phoebe, Shorekeeper, and Zani, Phoebe, Rover as separate teams. They're the same fucking team. It's just you switched out the support. It's the same team, right? And it's just... it's one. That's nuts. And it's just... I feel like it's not high value at all for any account, any player, to go for Phoebe and pull for Zani. You just spent upwards of 360 pulls, more like 320 pulls, to play one team. And those characters will never function, like, you'll never use them outside of that one team. So it's like, you're getting one for the price of two. Additionally, unlike in a release period, Zani isn't the best DPS in the game, since that's now Kartithia, and I'm gonna be honest, Zani ends up in the hands of the average player, in the hands of most players, Zani ends up being like one of the, like, the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th best DPS in the game, because, well, you end up missing a bunch of her attacks and extending the team's rotation, because... let's be honest here, like, Phoebe can sometimes feel like shit to rotate through, and then you got, like, Zani over here getting, like, her forte and stuff like that. It's like, oh, did you, like, get... There's a lot of opportunities for that team to, like, fuck up and take their 30-second rotation and make it, like, 40 seconds. And when that starts occurring, it's kind of cooked. As a result, we took Confession Phoebe out of Tier 0. I think that's fair. I think she should honestly be closer to Tier 1 based off of flexibility alone. But, you know, it is what it is. Rover Spectro. Hybrid. Tier 1 to Tier 1.5. Phoebe is the only team Spectro Rover really works with to an effective degree as a hybrid. Else, they're most often relegated to the support role in their best team with Zani. We don't think only being a top performer in one team warrants their hybrid placement to be the same as their support placement, so we lowered them. I think that's fine. Yeah, you really only play, like Moonlit Clouds, DPS, sub-DPS Rover in the Phoebe team. You go Rejuvenating Glow Spectro Rover when you play with the Zani Phoebe team. So I do think that they're obviously more effective in the Rejuvenating Glow role. So I think recognizing that, adding the delineation over there, perfectly fine to me. Verena, Tier 0 to Tier 0.5. Ooh, interesting. This is a big one. Yep, we're taking Verena out of Tier 0 after a long reign of 1.5 years. Kuro's definitely done a good job of replacing her out of literally every meta team imaginable since her release. And while she's still a top generalist pick at S2, close to S0 Shorekeeper, our tier list only grades her at S0, where she's objectively quite a bit worse. Yeah, I guess, basically, at S0, her rotation is about 2 seconds longer than it is at S2. So, okay, sure. The truth is, more and more top teams like Mono Havoc, Mono Fusion, Aero teams want to stop using Verena and either have their dedicated third slot teammate, Rosia, Lupa, Aero Rover, or at most want to use Shorekeeper because her buffing strength is much higher. Hence, we dropped Verena to Tier 0.5, but of course, she still remains one of the top support picks available. Tier 0.5, guys, is still incredibly good. And a character using, like, Verena over Shorekeeper, most of the times shouldn't be the difference between you clearing and not clearing. And when you have S2 Verena, which you can get just from losing 50-50s, most, I would say, not most, but a good portion of day one players have S2 Verena. I wish I could talk about how good S2 Verena is, but, yeah, no, we have dupes of literally everybody else except for her. Yep, I'm not even joking. We literally have dupes of every other character except for her. She's the only one I haven't gotten Encore yet either. Yeah, so the next one's probably going to go to Encore. I don't have her yet, but I know how good she is because I've used her on other accounts. And so it's a matter of just like S0 Verena might be Tier 0.5, but S2 is back to Tier 0, and you will just get S2 by playing the game. So I think it's a recognition of the jump in power. I don't think it's that big of a deal, and I think it's a fair take to make. Now for some quick tag changes. Lupa has had the gather tag added. Lupa has grouping. Yep, Lupa actually has grouping when she does like her team up move. Somebody uses their liberation. She like fucking swirls around and like drags everybody in, and then they get hit by a nuke. Very nice. Rover Arrow, partner tag removed. They're amazing on more than just Cartithia's team now that their weapon has gotten its duplicate, so we removed this tag. Actually true. Augusta, sustain tag removed. They gave Augusta the sustain tag because of her shielding. Her shielding doesn't do anything except just activate her kit. Jinxie, expert +1 removed. Her expert performance doesn't live up to the strength of the current tier 0 DPS anymore. Jancy nerf. Not really Jancy nerf, it's just a recognition of that even if you do play a little bit sweaty with her, it's probably just better to use her coordinated attack playstyle. Danjin, hybrid. S0 -1 added. Danjin's best use case alongside Frolova has her hybrid personal damage mattering more than before because Frolova's outro buffs two of Danjin's biggest damage sources. Since her sequences make her damage scale much higher than her S0 potential, we added the tag to reflect this. Fair. Yeah, Danjin has a lot of sequence nodes that deal damage. That's just the ToA changes. We still got all the WhiWa ones left, so get ready for yourselves, ladies and gentlemen. Let's just take a look at the ToA tier list right now. For the ToA, naturally, Prydwen's going to have their list separated across a bunch of different levers. They're going to have ToA with signatures, ToA without, and there's going to be a lot of jump ups for certain characters based off of how that stuff is going on. So you can see over here, tier 0 in the main DPS categories. We've got units like our Augustas, we've got Carlottas, Cartithias, Zanis. I think most people were aware of this, but I am going to be in the state of, man, I definitely could see this character potentially dropping down in the future, especially after seeing how she's performing in certain lineups right now. Because I do feel like she might need to be dropped down and have the expert tag added. I think her in tier 0.5 with the expert tag is something that makes sense because the number of people, the number of players that I've seen not able to use this team to clear floor 4 is kind of crazy. Because they cannot play the team properly. Because the team is actually one of the harder ones to play. Just because it's like, if you don't do animation cancels on literally everything, which you have to do those in this team, if you don't do animation cancels on the entire kits of everybody there, your rotation takes like 40-something seconds, and it's not good. It's like bad, right? The results are bad. The clear times are bad. And in the hazard zone, where you need only like 2 rotations to kill, not a problem. But when your rotations are taking 10 seconds longer because you're not putting in dodge cancels or all of that, because you're more casual, and then you get into, you know, like floors 3 and 4, that's where it starts all falling apart, and people are like, oh, wait, why does Zani feel like shit? It's because you're not playing giga sweaty with her to cut down her rotation time by like 25%, which you're expected to do for her to have tier 0 performance. That's why I think she should have the expert tag. This character, though, yeah, you're just rolling your fucking face on the keyboard. This character, also rolling your face on the fucking keyboard. And this character, once again, rolling your face on the fucking keyboard. You try that in the Zani team, and you will, like, not clear. But all these other guys, kind of effortless. Now, moving on, we got Camellia over here in tier 0.5. I think that's fair. She does very well in the ToA, currently floors 3 and 4. Jinxie's going to be over here as well with the expert tag removed. And then Phoebe's going to be down here with the, I don't know. Maybe Phoebe should be dropping down. I heard she isn't performing as well. And she does feel like she lacks like a little bit of scaling sometimes. I've kind of just been in the boat that like her main DPS form is okay. And oftentimes it's like you want a different form of rover anyways. Yeah, I'm just not a big fan of it. I don't really feel like her main DPS team is like that good. And then you're gonna have Iuno over here with you know, her sustainability, her main DPS stuff, but she ends up using Cartithia's team or, you know, does some like weird Janja Shorekeeper stuff. Now, getting down to the meta characters. As you can see over here, we got this whole category. Jian supposedly should be moving up to 0.5 with how well some of his other teams are doing. I would say the main suffering that's going on the roster right now is Zhang Liao. Because Zhang Liao is unfortunately a character that I think just doesn't have the right tools around him to really excel. And one of the big issues is, of course, the fact that his sub DPS is a piece of shit, Yinlin down here. And he ends up being played in dual DPS, but then his dual DPS partner has their own team now. So it's like he kind of just has had everything taken away from him because it's like he didn't have much in the first place. I'm hoping that there's something that works out for him in the future, because his kit is kind of like, it's got a lot of utility in it. He needs a sub DPS that does a lot of damage and can maybe take advantage of his utility. Something like that. Ironically, if Iuno buffed liberation damage, she would be a great support for him. Moving down, we got like Chisha over here, Calcharo down here. They should just take him out. I don't even know why the fuck he's still in here. Just get him out. This is just get him out. It's just maybe this is looking sad down here. Sub DPS category, everything is essentially exactly the same as it was before, so I don't think there's too many big updates to talk about over here. But then Iuno's getting added in tier 0.5 because she is, without like her focusing on damage, guys, she is a side grade. She is a side grade to Mortifi. I would just say all the other stuff I think we've got into. Cantarella, again, based off of Frolova being a strong character, I actually still am not sure why Frolova's still in... Oh, right, this is Sigless. Let's take a look at it with signatures. I think Cantarella with signature needs to be bumped up to tier 0.5 because Frolova is a very good team, right? Frolova, Cantarella, extremely good duo. I think I said this on the last tier list update. This unit should be in tier 0.5 because they work well with Frolova. And this is also the other thing. Frolova is very good in the new ToA. And the reason why Frolova is very good in the new ToA, ladies and gentlemen, is because these fights are longer. You have more time to get a 3-star clear, and you have way more enemies that you fight. And Frolova is a character that, as the time of a fight goes on, she becomes much fucking stronger because her crit damage buff, her multiplier buffs, all of that starts stacking up more. Frolova in the ToA used to be clearing in about a minute. That's not a lot of time to stack up Aftersound. These clears can be 2+ minutes, and that's a lot of time to stack up Aftersound to deal a lot of damage. And so I expect once floors 3 and 4 are brought in for the calculations, she probably goes up to tier 0, and Cantarella goes either up to tier 0.5 or tier 0 because she supports Frolova. Yeah, those are like the main updates over here. Not too much other stuff going on. I think we're ready to move on to Wuthering Waves. Alrighty, so there's some big changes over here. Now it's time for the big part of today's changelog. We completely revamped the Wuthering Waves tier list. The HP pools of every enemy more than doubled since the game mode's release, and that happened very quickly as well. Literally 114% in one patch. So much though, we thought Kuro Games had made a mistake by increasing the difficulty too much. Hence, we waited for another cycle before literally flipping the tier list on its head. I already gave some of the context on that. However, guess what? HP pools haven't been reduced one bit. They're at least equal to the last cycle. And while they kept HP the same, they have added more damage buffs available to the teams. So it's kind of like HP inflation, but then also damage inflation on the player's end as well. It's literally wired in. But unfortunately, they should probably add more damage inflation for the player. As a result, we had to make big changes to reflect the real meta of the recent iterations of Wuthering Waves. Were the HP pools to lower back to what they used to be, then we will adjust the tier list to something similar to how it looked before. But for now, we completely revamped it, and it looks very different. Let's keep reading. Instead of detailing every change, because literally 90% of the characters' positions shifted, we'll instead explain why the characters are in the power brackets they're currently in. And we'll be doing a thorough review of all this, don't worry. As usual, please remember gold tokens are not considered when judging character performance. Additionally, Plunderer abuse builds are not considered because Kuro can choose to nerf that in a heartbeat, and we need to revamp the whole tier list just off that alone. So what they're talking about is this Plunderer token that exists, where essentially you deal a burst of damage to all enemies around you if you stack enough healing ticks. And so some people are running stupid builds where they have like 5 out of 5 Lingering Tunes pieces, Electro damage, 3 costs, on a Yohu, who's a Glacio healer. And then they stack 3 healers on the team and then just use Plunderers every like half second. Everyone has Electro damage on the team, even though none of them are Electro units. And it's just like a cheese way to clear, right? And if you're judging the tier list based off of like, oh, I have 3 characters on my account, and I tailored their builds after this one purple token in this one game mode. I farmed 3 Sonata sets, 15 Echoes for this one token in this one game mode. You could do that if you want, but I agree with the take of not judging the tier list based off of that. That's my point of view. Tier 0. We only have 2 carriers in Tier 0 because these 2 make the game mode much easier than if you don't use them. Frolova makes scoring high a joke because her damage potential in the game mode is ridiculous, and Shorekeeper is the best 3rd slot teammate to almost every top tier including Frolova herself, where she is second best, very close to Rosia, ironically enough. So yeah, Frolova's basically a character where if you slot her in WhiWa, remember that after sound mechanic that I talked about before that stacks up her crit damage and her multipliers? Yeah, in WhiWa, you're forced to do a full 2-minute run, so she gains full benefit from it there. And it ends up with her basically solo carrying the game mode, and you can pair her with almost every team in the game, and that team will score high. She is, without a doubt, the best Wuthering Waves character in the game, and there's not really going to be a lot of competition due to the design of her kit. Tier 0.5. These characters are still in a sufficient power bracket to where they might be getting an SSS score, 5.5k plus points, easy if you're using 2 of their best teams, 1 on each side. Or they are the best partners for the Tier 0 characters. Also, yes, Augusta being in that tier, though her time stop mechanic prevents enemy waves from spawning in WhiWa, may surprise some. Please test her out. She does score really well even without her dedicated token. Yeah, you can time her liberation to work to a point where, like, waves will spawn. You just gotta make sure that when, like, the tick mark on, like, the top left corner of your screen in Wuthering Waves goes from, like, wave 1 and it goes to, like, wave 2, cast your liberation then, and you'll ensure that you can get at least like 1 or 2, maybe even 3 waves in the duration of her cast, instead of just, finishing off a mob or 2, which is where a lot of people are having issues. So that's gonna be tier 0.5. Now we got tier 1. These characters can definitely get an SSS score if you play their best teams well on both sides. However, they can still get an S score, 4,500 plus points, without much trouble at all. So you're beginning to kind of see what's going on. Tier 0 is like 7k scores. Tier 0.5 is like SSS. And then tier 1 is getting to like, maybe SSS if you get a little bit sweaty, but maybe 4,500 on average with not a lot of effort. And then tier 1.5 is where people are going to have to put in a little bit of work, and they're not really going to get crazy scores. And this is where, naturally, you'll see the example over here. These characters will definitely require their best teams to have an easy time clearing with an S score, but provided they are in their best teams, they should have no issues either. Gian will get a special mention here as he is in this tier. He used to be tier 0 before, but HP pools increasing by so much have definitely affected him the hardest. His grouping is great, but isn't effective on a lot of elites. He requires several attacks before even clearing a wave of small enemies. His damage per rotation is just too low to keep up with the HP pools of the game mode as effectively as he could before. And so, naturally, right, that's a big drop from tier 0 to tier 1.5, but this is the situation. I don't think Prydwen is actually using the right team on him. That's my take. And I'll show you all a little bit later on exactly what I'm talking about when we look at the tier list. Tier 2. A lot of characters are here because this power bracket where we consider scoring high enough to clear to be genuinely high maintenance compared to the characters above. They'll still be able to get an S if you're good at the game and are playing them in a proper team, but it won't be without a lot of effort. Tier 3. These characters will not be able to clear for casual players unless they're not doing anything alongside the Apex units and are just present on the team to be there and nothing else. Only the most dedicated players will be able to get good scores with these characters, and honestly, if you do, respect. So yeah, it kind of ranks it by how easy it is or how much effort you have to put in, how well suited they are for the game mode to get certain tiers of scores. So I can see why they did that instead of individually going through every change, because, well, when you look at the tier list now, yeah, that's looking a little bit insane, isn't it? It's looking a little bit nuts, a little bit crazy. So, yeah. Tier 0, you're going to have Frolova over here. Tier 0.5 is Camellia, which is interesting, right? Because I've personally always been in the boat that, like, my Camellia teams, ever since I was in the WhiWa reset, they haven't really felt particularly good. I'm going to be real with you there. I haven't had a lot of fun using Camellia. I've gotten some dog shit scores. And I guess some people have been doing like some interesting stuff to keep her up to these levels. But this is where like the whole like Gian situation is coming in, right? And we'll talk about it a bit later on. Looks like there's no sub DPSs. And then you're going to have Shorekeeper and Verena. I'm personally of the boat that Verena should actually be tier 0 because her rotation time in WhiWa and her ability to like feed certain characters, either forte or intro skills and stuff like that, is still like a big plus. And I think Verena is way better than Shorekeeper on the top side where you start at full concerto. Because Shorekeeper starting at full concerto is like, you can't even use her buffs. The reason why you're putting her in until she has full energy. And so oftentimes it could just be that like, she's just using her outro and then rejuvenating glow and nothing else. Verena activates her full buff from using her intro skill. So you like start on Verena, intro skill on somebody at the very top, on the top floor, and then she's just buffing the team like always. All she's giving it is her 50% outro, which is literally less than Verena, until you have her liberation up and ready to go. Sub DPSs, we're going to have Brant, Cantarella, because she works well with Frolova, Chang, Li, and Lupa. I mean, it's like, they're all sort of sub DPSs and main DPSs in this team, but I can see putting them into hybrid. Yeah, the Fusion team is really good. It is what it is. Yeah, they're really good. Tier 1, DPSs. Augusta, she's okay. Carlotta, this is where I'm good. This is where the questions start forming a little bit. Zani and Kartithia. This is my take. Gian clears better than all three of these units. Or these two units. Gian 1,000,000% has a better time in Whimpering Waves compared to Kartithia and Carlotta. I've done the testing myself. Don't worry. Because right now, I think the team that Prydwen is using is like a Mortifi Gian Shorekeeper team. And this is the situation. If you use Gian, Chakota, and Iuno, that team fucking obliterates WhiWa. I used that team on the first side, and I got like 3,000 scored the first time I ever tried it. I don't think you're getting 3K in WhiWa playing Carlotta, Shorekeeper, Jeja. I don't think that happens. I don't think you're getting 3K easy in WhiWa playing Arrow Rover, Kartithia, Chakota. I don't think that occurs. But you play Gian, Chakota, you're blowing up the game mode. I'm telling you that I'm doing that. I'm getting 3K score. You guys got to recognize what getting 3K score on the first side even entails. You want to know why? Because 3K score on the first side, ladies and gentlemen, that is the side where you start with Concerto instead of your Liberation. And Gian is a Liberation reliant character. And so he even does better on this side. You should get higher than 3.2K on this side. I'm personally in the boat that he's definitely not a tier 1.5 unit because I think he does better than these two. He definitely does better than Carlotta. I think that's a fact. He does better than Carlotta. So it's kind of just like, I do find it questionable how he drops so much when Chakota can easily supplement his grouping with her vacuum suction that she has on her heavy attack. Iuno has a little bit of gather from her echo skill if you're using the Lady of the Sea. And then also, right, has all the fucking like additional damage on top to nuke some of like the elites. The team works really well. That's his best team. I think he should be a little bit higher. So yeah, tier 1, I guess Zani's still like pretty good. Kartithia, again, that's the whole Gian situation. I think Phoebe's just complete dog shit. That's my opinion. She's absolutely horrible in the game mode because you need Chakota at a baseline to even use her with Phoebe, and then she gains like no buffs from using Chakota, and I don't think it's enough damage. Iuno as a hybrid is pretty good over here. Her grouping is okay, or she has okay amounts of grouping from the Lady of the Sea, which can help out a lot, but like her damage is a little bit more single target oriented, but her buffs are good. I don't know why Mortifi is still here. I'm gonna be real, like Mortifi over here is kind of like a little bit rough because his damage in WhiWa is like really not that good because he has ICD on his coordinated attacks, and he fires them off at one enemy at a time, so you're only using it for his buffing, and it's like, it seems like at least with the, maybe it's because of his performance with Augusta, maybe that's why. But yeah, he's definitely been replaced by Iuno for Gian. Rosia's in tier 1 now, which is interesting because I'm pretty sure Rosia is the intended teammate for the Camellia and the Frolova up here. Yeah, I guess she was just dog shit and Whimpering Waves the entire time. But I don't know, maybe she should be actually bumped up. I do find it weird that she's in tier 1. Sanhua, I can understand as well, I guess, because she doesn't deal that much damage and with the HP inflation. But yeah, I'm surprised at the Rosia pick. Chakona for me too is confusing because Chakona has one of like, in my opinion, her heavy attack in the game mode is fucking broken. And then like her rotation is super fast. So it's kind of just like a matter of like, I'm not really sure why she's so low. Maybe there should be like a reevaluation. I do maybe think that like the Gian, Chakota, Iuno team wasn't like tested a lot and it isn't really like factored in here because it's really good. Like it's really good. That's why you get S0R1 Kartithia 2.1, 2.2k max. Yes, and I'm telling you, Gian is just easily getting 3k with Chakota. So it's like, I think she should be up here. Phoebe, Jeja, I think Jeja's in tier 2 and Carlotta's in 1.5. Or maybe Carlotta's in tier 2. I'm just going to be real with you here. This character can only function in this game mode because of like, this character is tied to Carlotta in this game mode. She's entirely single target. She does no AoE damage. The team is not... I don't think the team is that good. I think this is heavily overstated. She jumps down, and she jumps down as well. 1,000,000%. I cannot see these two characters performing at the same level as some of the ones down here. Brant as a main DPS, I think he's pretty good with the anchor tech. And then you just have a bunch of garbage down here. I'm surprised that Yang Yang is so low. Maybe they haven't experimented that much with her and they kind of let like the damage be like more the conversational driver. Let's see what it looks like with signatures. Oh, okay. So Augusta with Sig jumps up. Rosia with Sig jumps up. Okay, I see what's going on. And then Carlotta, Cartithia, Zani. Chacona jumps up a lot with Sig. Okay, I see that. And then you got this whole situation down here. Yeah, I'm in the boat of put her down to tier 2. Jump this guy up to tier 1. Get her down to tier 1.5, and that's probably what I would do. Bump him up to tier 1, take her down to tier 1.5, take Jeja down to tier 2. Jinxie's where she should be. She's so dog shit in the game mode, it's unbelievable. And yeah, that looks to me to be pretty fair. This one to me looks pretty fair, looks pretty good. Makes a good bit of sense. I like that one. Yeah, those would be my takes based off of my experiences using the teams with and without signatures. As you can see over here, the Prydwen tier list update this day has been absolutely fucking nuts. There's been a lot of stuff that went on with it. And hopefully we've done like a bit of an overview. We've clarified a lot of stuff. I agree with most of the placements on here based off the personal playtest that I've done on my account and other accounts as well. And yeah, I can see why certain characters were lower before without their SIGs and stuff like that. So interesting, pretty good. Why don't we take a look at their Iuno page and just see what their takes are on the character. Let's take a look at the review. Pros. Jack of all trades, master of all, main DPS, sub DPS, buffing, healing, standard restoration, Iuno does everything. True. Gives shields to herself while constantly healing on most of her attacks, difficult to die from consecutive small hits. She is sometimes really interruptible in the air, though, and her stagger animations can be tilting, because you have a long way to fall the higher up you are. Very flexible team-wise thanks to her ability to fill many roles, extend or shorten her rotation to whatever's necessary, and shed some light on less used characters who will actually find a purpose with her on the team. John Shin is the main one. Curl also provided a shortened description feature, so you can actually view her kit fast. And then, of course, one of her ultimate voice lines, "Answer my call," kind of sounds like an angry mother. Iuno sounds old. I will say that in EN. Yeah, she sounds like old. I think a lot of people were thrown off by her EN voice, especially compared to her CN and JP one. Yeah, she sounds like fucking kind of like in her 30s. 30 plus in EN, and then like way younger in the other one, in the other languages. So cons, damage focused character, implying she really wants a properly strong weapon equipped to justify her presence on teams over already established options. This kind of means that she's like a high investment, somewhat pay-to-winny sort of character. Not really pay to win, but if you're not giving her a lot of resources, you won't be able to use her at her full potential, and she'll seem like not that valuable of a pick. Her value basically grows a lot because she can do a lot of damage, but you gotta let her do a lot of damage. She gives up damage amplifications to herself when swapping out, not just the incoming character. Hence, she is quite quick swap unfriendly. Oh! That's something new. Yeah, so she basically gets a 40% damage amp built into her kit that lasts 10 seconds. And, well, it will disappear when she swaps. So you really don't want to do that. Prone to interruption midair, which can slow down her rotations a lot. Watch out for enemy attacks and make sure to dodge. I already mentioned that, right? If you get hit in the air, then you're like... Takes a long time. That ultimate animation will be a pro to some of you. Not to the ones who wrote this. Sorry, not sorry. So I guess the Prydwen reviewer isn't a fan of feet. So that's just a bit of news for all the people there. Calling themselves out, I don't know. Maybe they think they're doing the opposite. But yeah, overall, makes sense to me. I generally agree with all the stuff that's in there. And for this tier list, obviously a lot of big updates, but I think they have kind of like hit the nail on the head for a lot of things. But there are naturally still some adjustments that I feel like could be made, as there is every single time. It's never going to be perfect on the first pass, but it's always improving. I think they did a good job this time, but holy shit, does this look fucking diabolical, right? This just looks... This is diabolical, but it kind of is an accurate representation of what WhiWa's looking like right now, and maybe, right, as we get more changes and updates, they fix burning waves and do all of that. We've already seen that they're starting to do it. They just need to go full force, and give some more power back to the players. That'll be that for that one, ladies and gentlemen. Let me know what you all thought. Peace.